This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 415 of the Dressage Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by TotalSaddleFit.com and Kentucky Performance Products. Tonight, we're going to be continuing with our Destructing the Movements series with judge and trainer Jennifer Roth, who is back on the show with us. And we've also, as usual, got a great saddle fit tip.
This is Reese Koffler-Stanfield from Georgetown, Kentucky.
And this is Philip Parks from Rockwood, Ontario, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show.
Well, hey there, Phil. How are you today?
I'm all right. It's starting to turn around weather-wise, and starting to think about a few things. We've had some trainers in the farm doing some lessons. And my normal trainer Cindy has joined us, and she's kicking butt, getting ready for the show. So I think we're starting to feel a little excited, a little anticipation. We got our first show in 2.5 weeks or so. So
wow, it's coming up. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool. Well, we are the same, and it's Derby week around here, so there's been lots going on with that, and it's always
Rolex was awesome. I hear
Rolex was awesome. It was, I heard it was great, and it was fun. Clark Montgomery won the dressage. He had been here at my farm training a little bit, and so that was fun to see him win. I don't think he was as good on cross country, but I didn't ask. So I love
Coach
it.
Jen could help us with what was going on Rolex week in Kentucky.
Clark kicked everybody's butt on dressage. It was awesome.
Yes.
Cross country day, there were a lot of runouts. It was a very influential course this year. So I would say Clark had a decent cross-country round, but not stellar. But things were not hopeless. But then for stadium jumping, again, a tough course. A lot of rails down for a lot of riders. And the time was hard to make, which was surprising because the track didn't look like it would be hard to make. It was just one of those weekends. It started out fabulous, but I think the tough cross-country course, there were a lot of tired horses at the end of the day, took its toll come stadium jumping time, and there were lots and lots of rails and lots of time.
And it was warm, wasn't it, Jen?
It was warm. It was in the mid to upper 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really warm. So I think horses that were not training in hot weather, maybe that had a detrimental effect. And they changed the track just a little bit, and I think those subtle changes in the track make a big difference because there's a lot of terrain at the horse park. There's a lot of subtle ups and downs. So you change a track early in the course where you go up a long hill instead of across the side of the long hill. Early in the course, you're going to be a little more tired than you thought you were. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. That makes total sense. Interesting. And so who are the top three?
Let's see here. Well, everybody knows who's going to win. Michael Young won.
Yeah, Michael, yes.
The German took the money home again.
The three-peat, good for him. I mean, 3 times winning in a row. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's great. Yeah. Good for him.
You betcha. Yeah, it was Zara that had third. Maxime second and Zara third. I couldn't remember if it was flipped around, but coming out of cross country, it was Michael, Maxime, and Zara, and then following show jumping, it stayed the same.
Cool.
Because Michael had a rail in hand, and he took it.
Oh, did he? He was like, thank you so much. Well, it's not bad to have a rail in hand then.
Yeah. Very uncharacteristic for Fisher O'Connor to have a rail, but the course was, and Michael admitted, he said, yes, the course was tough. There was a lot of maximum fences, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, to be that experienced and, you would think he had a little bit of nerves. I mean, he's still a human. So I would think he had a few little nerves going in there. So, yeah.
And I think we saw a couple of photos. We had lots of listeners and auditors join you on course.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, we had a great turnout. We had lots and lots of auditors come out. We went out and had dinner on, Friday night. And then we met up at the first jump on Saturday and everybody wandered around. Everybody did a lot of shopping. posting lots and lots of pictures. So that was a great time.
Awesome. Oh, good.
Awesome.
We love it. We love it. And does anybody have a derby pick for this week?
I do.
I'm putting everybody.
I do.
Who is it?
My heart wants Sonneteer to win, and apparently Sonneteer has no chance in the world. But
You never know.
They always
You never
say
know.
that until they win.
Yeah, exactly. You never know.
he's one of the Calumet entries, and I want Calumet to get on
love
the
it.
board.
I love it. And then isn't Patch the one-eyed horse?
Yes,
Patch
he is.
Patch.
I just feel for Patch. I really, really want Patch to win. So
Yeah.
he's my pick.
He's
not because he's fast.
Not because he's fast, but because he's got a great story.
Exactly. I love the stories. I'm the one watching the NBC coverage from like 2:00 on. I'm like, I'm crying. Like, I love
get
it.
all
Yeah,
backstories
that's
and
Music.
So actually,
I'm
I think
torn
I haven't
this
looked
year,
too much
though.
into it.
Because
sorry.
badminton has a live stream. Because the badminton 4-star is this weekend, as is the Derby. So which do I watch? I can't record the live stream on badminton, so I'm liable to record the Derby coverage and watch that on Sunday. So I'm going to have to isolate myself from the news so I can watch badminton.
Yeah, that's tough. But then there's no commercials, and you just watch the stories. So I probably tune out.
For the Kentucky Derby, it's kind of like the Super Bowl. Sometimes there's some fun commercials for the Derby, so I don't mind.
That's true. That's true. But then you have it on record. You can watch them.
Again and again.
Phil, how about you? What do you got?
I don't know. I haven't not looked into it a whole lot yet this year. I just have been a little crazy busy, but I know that there is a Canadian bred and owned entry, is there not?
I think
I'm
there
not sure.
is. Yes, now that you say
I'm pretty
that.
sure, actually, the farm is not too far from me. Like 45 minutes or
you
so.
have
So
to.
I got to root for our country, right? If
Canadian.
that's the case.
I like it. Cool. Well, we will come back next week. I hope everybody has a little Kentucky Derby party and a mint julep. We should put the mint julep up on the Facebook page on how to make a proper mint julep for sure. So, yeah, for sure. Well, I love it. Well, Phil, we're going to start our segment today. We are with Jennifer Roth, and she is going to discuss Travers and Renvers. Well, tonight we are continuing our series that everyone is loving from the trainer's perspective and also the judge's perspective. So we asked our good friend and backed by definitely popular demand is Jennifer Roth. She is a USEF Small R judge, FEI rider, trainer, and owner of Milestone Farm. Jennifer, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy our little talks. This is great.
Well, you did such an awesome job. I have sent multiple students of mine to go listen to when we did the series through the levels. So you were a natural for tonight's discussion. And so, Jennifer, our task tonight is to talk about Travers and Renvers. So let's start sort of from the trainer's perspective. When we start saying Travers or haunches in, it's the same thing for everybody who sees that funny word. So talk to us about Travers.
Sure. So Travers is something we start seeing at second level. Basically, it's one of those lateral movements. And, the aim of a lateral movement is to develop and increase, the engagement of the hindquarters and also, therefore, helping to develop better collection. So basically, when we talk about Travers, it's performed in the collected trot. The forehand remains on the track and the head is looking straight along the track. The haunches are, of course, moved to the inside, and the horse is bent toward the direction of the movement. So if you're tracking right, the horse is bent right. If you're tracking left, the horse is bent left. And as a trainer, what I always help with my students is just getting that idea initially of displacing the haunches to the inside. So oftentimes I'll start with almost like a little nose to the wall leg yield. So the horse and the rider start to develop that idea of yielding the haunches over, and then we start to develop bend from there, making sure that the rider's weight stays towards the bend on that inside seat bone because the horse has to be bent around the inside leg. And when I look at it from front or behind, I want to make sure that I see, those 4 tracks, which is a little bit, different than, say, the shoulder end. And the bend is greater in the haunches in than the shoulder end. And the consistency of the angle for those that are mathematically inclined is about 35 degrees. And when we're looking at the legs, the horse's outside hind leg passes and crosses in front of the inside hind leg, and the outside foreleg is placed in front of the inside foreleg. So the haunches have to leave the track, the shoulders have to stay on the rail, the bend has to be to the inside, making sure that the rider stays weighted to the inside seat bone, of course, not dangling off the inside, but just sitting into the bend. And we want to make sure that something as a trainer that I'm really big on is that the gait shouldn't suffer. Oftentimes, when people, first learn this, they're apt to want to slow the horse down or, make it a little easier. And I have to really remind people that the trot really shouldn't change. So you almost sometimes have to accelerate a little bit or think accelerate to make sure that there isn't that loss of impulsion, which kind of creates that dreaded, draggy, slow joggy trot that we all absolutely want to avoid, the jog. But yeah.
I love it. And
okay,
so when...
I was just going to say that all sounds great, but I find this is one of the hardest movements to teach somebody how to ride. So Jen, maybe you could tell us a little bit, you talked a little bit about head to wall leg yield. Are there any more kind of prerequisites before, starting the Travers? Like for me, I like to be able to do a little bit of turn on the forehand, and then a little bit of turn on the haunches also to kind of try and introduce this. What are your ideas there?
I mean, really, it's all about making sure the horse is, laterally supple and attending to the aids. So leg yield, turn on the haunches, turn on the forehand, even just doing those, little side pass in the walk, things just to make sure that the rider understands and the horse understands how to move off a rider's aids. I oftentimes like to use circles when, like a 10-meter circle or so, to help riders kind of find and establish the angle and the bend prior to starting the haunches in. Oftentimes, riders don't do a good job of using corners where we all know that points are oftentimes lost. So I'll direct them to make like a 10-meter circle, start to develop the angle at the end of the circle, go a couple strides. If they start to lose it or the trot starts to suffer, let's do another 10-meter circle, get yourself back organized, then come again, outside leg back, establishing the shoulders on the line with the outside rein, so just kind of breaking it up. There's nothing worse than just saying, okay, now haunches in, you have to hold it, for the entire 60 meters and good luck with that. But just breaking it up and making it, in little digestible bits. But yeah, anything that involves moving the horse, sideways off of a leg and making sure that is understood by both horse and rider, that there is a move away from response is definitely imperative to teaching the haunches in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so let's talk about the Renvers, because that's an interesting twist on the Travers.
It is. And actually here recently they moved the Renvers from second level to third level. So now we see it in third level tests too. But it existed kind of with the shoulder in for a long time at second level. I personally liked that movement because it was hard to do, and my horse was very supple, so it was kind of nice. But it's the inverse in relation to the Travers. So this time the hindquarters remain on the track while the forehand is moved inward, but then the bend is to the direction of travel instead of away from the direction of travel. So you kind of have the shoulders to the inside like a shoulder and the haunches stay on the track, but then you're bending the direction you're going. But otherwise, the same sort of conditions apply to the Travers that are applicable for the Renvers. So the horse is bent around the inside leg. The legs, cross and pass the same. The horse is bent, like I said, the direction of it's moving. So again, it's just to demonstrate that the trot is fluid and with a greater degree of bend than, say, a shoulder in. It's very similar, just similar aids, just put in a different direction. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does.
It does because I've ridden it before. Right?
Yes. So tell us. I mean, that's the tricky. I always kind of describe it to my students as it's haunches into the outside. So it's basically very similar to the haunches in. You just happen to be going to the outside versus the inside.
Inside, right.
Right. And so that's one of the things that I teach them. So sometimes if that confuses someone, I will go, and I'll say, okay, well, this is the position here. Let's change it, and let's go ahead and do it to the outside. So along the long wall, or even on the quarter line, is where I'll start the Renvers.
Yeah,
or center line.
Absolutely.
So that, learning to sort of move around.
Right, and it seems like the thing, since the aids are relatively identical, the thing that always seems to mess people up is, I can do haunches in, say, tracking left, but I can't do Renvers, when I'm tracking to the right, but it's really the same sort of aid. So if you take the wall away from them and their perception of where, direction really is, like in the middle of a field or something, and you show them, okay, like if you're tracking to the left, this would be haunches in, but if you were tracking to the right, this would be Renvers. It sometimes kind of lifts that mind block away, and it's a little bit easier to figure out. Oftentimes when I'm teaching somebody the Renvers, I'll actually start them in a shoulder for, shoulder in, and say, okay, this is the horse's positioning. Now you just have to change the bend. But the shoulders have to stay to the inside. The haunches have to stay on the track. We're just going to bend it the other way, and making sure to switch your seat bones and sit the appropriate direction. So
right, and so that's where you'll see it in a test. You see it once.
When it occurs in the test, you have to ride it that way, right? Because
right.
The wall is you can't push the horse's haunches through the wall, so you have to position and shoulder. And that's why I like Renvers. I almost always like to teach it a little bit before Travers, because it makes the most sense to me. If I can do a little shoulder in, all I have to do is change the bend, and the horse has a Renvers positioning, and then I can teach Travers out of that. Sort of like you said, it doesn't really matter the direction of travel. If you can teach all this stuff on a center line, then you can do it this way, that way, anywhere. It's just when people get stuck against the wall and horses get stuck against the wall, that's where the problems start to occur. So again, in Renvers, the way I like to teach it also, I'd like to begin sort of thinking about these things, shoulder in or Renvers. I like to leg yield and then change the bend in the leg yield. So, it's not half-assed because the shoulder doesn't lead. I actually try and get the hind leg to lead a little bit. The same way that I teach leg yield, only just sort of help to bend the horse. So all this stuff is just about making the horse more supple, and like you said, maintaining the energy. Those are the two most important things.
And I don't know about you guys, but at this stage of a horse's training, so we're right in the first, second level range of when you're sort of teaching this, and it's laying the groundwork for their career to follow, or the rider's career to follow. But I like to do it also in a circle. I think that makes a lot of sense when you're on an actual circle line. So I'll do it a lot of times on a circle line. How about you guys?
No, absolutely. Because one of the things I find, with a lot of riders is they get so wrapped up in the bend that they forget, the movement itself or why the movement exists. So they go to do a shoulder in and they just start pulling on the inside rein, or a haunches in, they just start, putting an outside leg back and pulling on the inside rein. A circle line helps to establish that bend already. It just, the natural curve. So they're not so wound up about it. And then they can focus on the actual displacing of the appropriate body parts, whether it's, the haunches, the shoulders, whatever. So yeah, absolutely. The circle line is marvelous for that, because there's a lot less jerking on the inside rein when you use that to your advantage.
Yeah. And the only other thing I was going to add to it is I always think about with my students where they're sitting, because you really have to pay attention to what seat bone you're sitting on. You're sitting on the inside seat bone as you're doing both shoulder and haunches in. But Renvers, remember, you change the bend to the outside. Right. So you have to, from the shoulder in, if you're coming from the shoulder in and going to the Renvers, you have to change your seat bone. And I think that's something that you have to think about from both the judging, I'm sure, perspective, but the training's perspective too, is, this is part of what you have to do as you're doing it. So we'll be playing this a lot with our, my students, and then have to really think about that. So that was the only other thing I was going to add from the training perspective, is learning how to do that.
Yeah, I think one of the big traps. Oh, sorry, Jen, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Philip. You're great.
I was going to say one of the big traps that everybody falls into, especially when teaching a horse this and schooling this, is using way too much outside leg to try and create that Travers, and then you're driving your outside seat bone down. At this point in training, I think that it might be good to introduce a small spur, or start using the whip a little bit more, because if I have to drive my outside seat bone back and down to create the Travers, it's not correct. No matter what, it won't be correct. You can move the hind legs, but your seat position, like we're saying, sitting on the inside seat bone, will never happen. But if I can, put a little spur on and get the horse to sort of listen to my outside leg a little bit easier without having to drive all my effort onto that leg and onto that seat bone, I'm going to be way further ahead. Or if I can just give a quick tap with a whip, like a correction, like, hey, move off my leg, and then I'm not having to use a lot of big effort. And, you see this all the time in the Travers, a rider's outside leg way too far back, the horse not even caring what's happening, the rider sitting way to the outside and wondering why they're having problems bending the horse. The horse, this is a point a little bit where dressage people talk about, second level, third level, whatever, the dressage starting to happen. That means the horse must be attentive and balanced and not requiring the rider to work harder and harder and harder for less effect. So I think that's kind of an important thing that I try and instill in people, that even when you're introducing it and when you're teaching the horse it can't be so difficult that it's never going to happen. So yeah, just a little bit thinking about the use of the aids and how they can assist you and how it's better to make a correction than nag for 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
It's so true. Well, Jen, right after, we're going to just change our hats here and have a commercial break, and we're going to come back from the judge's perspective.
He was her first love, the one that started it all. He taught her how to master the posting trot and navigate her first hunter course. They spent hours together exploring the trails and hanging out in the barn. His name was doodled on every page in her school notebook. His coat gleamed in the sun as he met her at the gate each day, snuffling for a treat. From the first time she saw him poking his head out of the stall to the last time she patted him goodbye, he was, and always will be, her everything. This love story is brought to you by Nalox Advanced, providing complete support for a healthy digestive tract, which reduces the risk of colic and digestive upset. The horse that matters to you matters to Kentucky Performance Products. Call 859-873-2974 or visit kppusa.com to order today.
So we're back with Jennifer Roth, and she is an FEI rider trainer, and she's also a small R judge. So she's changed her hat now. So Jen, let's talk about Travers and Renvers from the judge's perspective. So what are you looking for?
So one of the biggest things, we'll talk about Travers first, because Travers is a second level movement. They moved, like I said before, Renvers now is in third level test 2. Which I'm not licensed to judge third level yet, but hopefully here in the near future, I'll be moving on up. So what we look for in Travers, when you sit at C, the judges also, if you sit at C versus a side judge, we have different jobs, and there's things, when you sit at the side that you can't see about, say, a Travers or a Renvers that you can see at C. But I'll talk about it from the C perspective. So the first thing that we always look at when we see Travers is we want to see, those distinctive, tracks. We want to see, if you're standing right behind the horse or in front of a horse, you're going to see about 4 tracks. Well, we want to see that the horse, shoulders stay on the track, haunches come to the inside. We want to see bend the appropriate direction. We want to see that the horse maintains, because again, we're talking about second level, uphill balance. They have to be collected, the collected movement. And we don't want to see the impulsion go away. You're the carrying power, the engagement, the impulsion, the energy level, all of that stuff should stay the same. It should look fluid. You're going from establishing it, out of a circle, whatever, you're establishing it, getting your bend, moving fluidly up the long side. The trot remains the same. The balance maintains the same. The rider is sitting the correct direction, and everything just flows and looks seamless. What we don't want to see is too much bend to the inside. We don't want to see you really pulling on the inside rein, thinking that somehow the bend is going to make this movement happen. We don't want to see riders pulling backwards or over cueing, with leg aids. Again, it's all just supposed to look seamless and effortless on the lightest aids possible. But really the balance, the energy level, and the appropriate displacement and bend of the body parts is the horse's body parts is what we're looking for. And then everybody will be getting 10s. Like I'm still waiting to give that 10 on the Travers. We love to give big scores, but yeah, so go forward and bend appropriately and make it all fluid and soft, and there'll be 10s all around.
I love it. I love it. So what are some major faults you see when you go in and say, oh boy, we're getting below 6 or below? What are some things that 6 or below?
Sure. So we talked a little bit about the horse that kind of slows to that painful jog. They go and the rider is trying to contort themselves and their horse to get the butt to move, to the inside. And the horse is slowing down to this painful, slow motion joggy crawl because it's losing its engagement. It's losing its carrying power behind. So then my score is starting to go from that, perfect 10. Now we're starting to get to we're getting to the 6 mark. Then if you don't have enough bend. So we talked about having too much bend. We don't want to see the horse's head cranked around to the inside. But if you don't have any bend, this movement is supposed to have bend. It's to develop lateral suppleness. It's, designed to have bend. So show us the appropriate degree of bend. If you don't have enough displacement of the haunches to the inside, you think you're pushing the butt over and you're pulling the horse's head to the inside and nothing's really moving. Now we're talking, well below a 6. Don't make me go to the insufficient, 4 range. And then you also have the horses that, you start to put your aids on. The head goes up. They start running away from the aids. You have some sort of resistance, slamming on the brakes, all those horrible stomach sinking things that I'm sure have happened to all of us at some point. But yeah, so those are the bad things. Yeah.
So the good things. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah. I was just going to say, do you have very many riders that tend to ride their lateral stuff all the way into the corner? And then are you forced to take a lower score because they don't straighten the horse after the movement?
So that's more of a modifier. So that would be, okay, I'm not going to take a lot of points off of that because, yes, you are supposed to straighten and show that, bringing the haunches, in this case, back into alignment with the shoulders before proceeding into the corner. But that's going to be a modifier for me. So if you have all of those wonderful angels are singing haunches in beautiful gorgeousness, and then you don't really straighten your horse, well, I'm going to take just a little bit off. And I'm going to make a comment about that, just to let you know, everything was really great. You're on the right track, but I had to take, a little bit off because you didn't do this. So please remember to do this from here on out. Most people are so desperate to get out of the movement if it's not going well that they're going to straighten long before the letter that you're supposed to. So most people aren't so desperate, I'm being amazing, I'm going to ride this thing all the way through the corner. I don't see that as often, but it does happen every once in a while.
And what about mistakes as it relates to Renvers? Because of course you want the same kind of ideas of forward going and bending, but is there any kind of weird stuff that commonly happens in the Renvers?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time what happens is the wall has a gravitational pull of all of its own. So a rider goes to do a Renvers and they can't, where they can do a shoulder in, but as soon as they change the bend, all of a sudden the horse wants to just kind of go to the wall instead of the rider being able to keep it around the inside leg, preventing it from just kind of turning to the wall. So oftentimes what we'll see is, you go to do a Renvers and then you don't have the appropriate angle because it's drifting to the wall. Yeah, again, the slowing down, the overbent, the over-cueing, sitting on the wrong seatbone, leaning to the outside, trying to get it to go where you want it to go. But most of the time it's just not enough angle, not enough shoulder displacement, stiffening up, slowing down, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
That makes sense. Yeah, because I am not the judge, I rely on you for this segment. But no, that makes total sense. I mean, I'm like, oh, that looked great. No, but I think that makes total sense. And I think that's one of the things that you're always watching out. And I think just the idea of the basic gait cannot change in the movement. And I think that's been a really helpful tip. So Jennifer, thank you so much for your time today. How would our listeners find out or find you online?
But you can find me on Facebook. I'm Jennifer R. as in Richard Roth. And you can always email me, dressagerider7@aol.com, or you can find my Facebook page, Milestone Farms LLC. That is also on Facebook.
This week's dressage training tip is brought to you by Total Saddle Fit, home of the shoulder relief girth at TotalSaddleFit.com.
Well, we have started doing this on the fly, Total Saddle Fit tip of the week. And from Coach Jen, is this coming from an email or an auditor page? Where's this tip? This question
one was a Facebook message that I got.
Awesome. Coach Jen likes, this is a new thing. It's Philip thing. And I never know what's coming up. So for the Total Saddle Fit tip of the week, Coach Jen, count us in. What do we got?
This is, my horse has naturally short strides. He is half Morgan. He tracks up at both the walk and the trot, yet he seems to be more up and down than forward at those gaits. Can you recommend any exercises to help him move longer?
Are you gonna crack this one first, Reese?
You can go ahead. You start. I always get to start. You get to start this one.
You know what's super handy for a horse like this is
Cavalettis. Yeah.
Walk pole, trot pole.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say that too.
We don't stray too far in our training here, Reese. So
that's true.
For sure. Just start where the horse is comfortable at a distance that's comfortable for the horse. You got to figure that out a little bit. And then just start making the spaces a little bit wider. You know, the poles force the horse to, walk or trot a little bit longer without the rider having to force any of that issue. That's why it's an awesome tool that we use so much because, and it's kind of fun for the horses. They get excited about it a little bit. Mm-hmm. It keeps them going forward. But basically, I mean, no matter what the horse is, whether he's born a little bit short-strided or has more of a flowing stride, we're always trying to improve the rideability of the horse and then the natural ability of the horse. So through rideability, through exercises, then you improve the ability of the horse to be able to make shorter strides, longer strides. I mean, this goes all the way into Grand Prix to where you can collect the horse to piaffe, trot on the spot more or less, and extension. So everything that you do dressage-wise, all the exercises we give you every week is going to help you with this problem.
Yes.
There's nothing that won't help it, really.
Right, and one of the exercises I love is sort of adds what Philip says is I agree. I would say absolutely trot poles and walk poles would be very, very helpful. I like to do that actually in the combination with a turn on the forehand. So basically the exercise that I do is I would set the poles up on one side of the circle. And again, it's kind of impossible for us to know, from just hearing, distances, just talking, or just hearing that tip, but, you've got to do it to your horse's comfort level. And then, again, gradually bringing the poles out. But what I would like to do is trot those trot poles, or you can do it in the walk. You could walk the walk poles. And then on the other side of the circle, at the other circle point, I would do a full turn on the forehand, 360 degrees, slowly, where the horse is bending. And I would either walk or trot out and do the poles again. So you kind of have your lateral suppleness going on. You also have the horse reaching for the poles. So I think that's a very good exercise that I would.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Combine lateral suppleness
mm-hmm.
with longitudinal suppleness.
Yeah, that's kind of what you need. You need that. Yeah, that's the exercise that you need for that particular problem. Because, I mean, again, you can make that horse more supple. You can make him longitudinally and laterally. You can get there. It's just going to take a little bit of time. It's sort of like me doing yoga. I can eventually get better at yoga, but I'm not innately a super flexible person, and my job makes me not super flexible. So I can't expect to be able to do like a handstand on my head on the first day. But if I slowly work on it, I'm get better and better at it, get more confident, and that's the same thing with your horse. So let us know how that works. I think that come back with us and let us know how our tip helps.
Cool.
I think always sort of engaging the top line of the horse. Mm-hmm. If the horse is hollow at all over the poles, then it's not going to work, right? You have to make sure you can maintain, the back to front reach and stretch so that the back muscles get stronger and are, it's all about shortening and lengthening the back muscles. So just a lot of times when we try and shorten the strides, we feel like the whole horse gets a little shorter, but can be very hollow and high in the poll. So, this is sort of a training level exercise. So we want to maintain a poll that is at or below the wither height, just to make it work even better for you, if you can do that at the same time.
This tip was brought to you by Total Saddle Fit, the shoulder relief girth that Reese and Philip both love. And here's why.
The saddle fit solution you have been waiting for is finally here. TotalSaddleFit.com is proud to introduce the Shoulder Relief Girth. This strategically shaped girth actually moves the girth line of your saddle back over 1 inch, thereby freeing your horse's shoulders from the saddle. Traditional girths pull saddles up against a horse's shoulders and often over the top of the shoulders. The Shoulder Relief Girth's recessed ends allow for the billets to buckle into the girth farther back to give your horse unparalleled freedom of motion. We are so certain that your saddle will fit better and your horse will be more comfortable that for a limited time we are offering a 30-day, 110% money-back guarantee. If you are not totally satisfied with your shoulder relief girth, send it back for a full refund plus 10% of the purchase price. Don't wait. Order now for the best saddle fit solution available.
At TotalSaddleFit.com. Visit TotalSaddleFit.com.
The other thing I wanted to jump to is a little bit of a Facebook shout out, because Doreen Rose, who is a longtime listener and has been on our show before, writes a newsletter for the Long Island Dressage Association and added a bit of blurb about our radio show. So we wanted to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to her today and say thanks for adding that. And hopefully we've gained 1 or 2 extra, new listeners because of that. It's a great newsletter. It seems like a great group, the Long Island Dressage Association. So
love it.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you, Doreen. We love you. Appreciate it. Well, everybody, you can find our show notes and links to today's guests on our website, dressageradio.com. Like us on Facebook, just search Dressage Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter @Horse Radio. My website is maplecrestfarmky.com, and my email is reese@horseradionetwork.com.
The best way to find me is on Facebook, or my email is philip@horseradionetwork.com. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week for allowing us to put on a good show. And don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.
Everybody, keep your heels down and your shoulders back, and we will talk to you next week.